I love to fish all of Florida Bay, from right here in the backyard where we've had some of the most spectacular bone fishing on the planet.
People ask me, what's the deal with fishing in the Florida Keys? And I just have to laugh because what else is going on here? I mean, that's what we do here.
There's no place in Florida Bay that's escaped from me.
This is Florida Bay, the turquoise jewel of the Everglades. It is a birthplace, a nursery, a home to an incredible variety of life.
Commercial fishermen will depend on it, recreational fishermen, everybody here.
Really, the only reason I have the opportunity to live here is because there's a healthy resource.
The bay's crystal clear waters are essential to life. Its mangroves provide nesting habitat for birds and shelter for a variety of aquatic animals. But it's the vast meadows of seagrass that make this ecosystem flourish.
In South Florida, we're in the middle of the largest documented seagrass meadow in the world. There's about 18,000 square kilometers of seagrasses. That's about the size of Connecticut and Rhode Island put together.
Seagrass is incredibly important for a variety of reasons in Florida Bay. It's habitat and food for a myriad of species, but it also is the anchor, the glue that keeps sediments in place in this very shallow bay.
Without that lush seagrass, this entire ecosystem is in danger.
As an estuary, Florida Bay's habitats exist where saltwater from the Gulf of Mexico mixes with freshwater from the River of Grass. Historically, that fresh water was delivered, even during the dry season, to support abundant wildlife such as sea turtles, crocodiles, roseate spoonbills, and robust fisheries that make the Florida Keys the fishing capital of the world.
For those people that don't know or don't have the history of fishing in Florida Bay for several decades, they may think it's an incredible place to fish, and indeed it is, but it's not nearly what it was in previous decades when we had better habitat.
When you talk to some of we call them old timers, when you talk to them, they talk about areas in immediate Islamorada, Shell Key and Lignuvite and the Peterson Key banks, which are traditional bonefish spots, but they talk about how back in the 60s that redfish used to be a nuisance back there. They would get angry when they were casting at bonefish and the redfish would make an appearance.
But the system is no longer in balance, and Florida Bay is too often starved of fresh water. This reality became obvious in the late 1980s when disaster struck.
In Florida, there's a public hearing this evening in which a broad range of people, from business leaders to environmentalists, will come together with one demand: that state officials move quickly to save Florida Bay.
We had some very rough years in the late 80s and 90s.
It was a very strange thing to watch. No one knew what was going on. It made me physically ill when I went to look at this place that I loved, just coming apart. People described it like falling apart like rotting cloth.
When the water is dingy like that, it's very difficult to see the fish. And the treasure of this fishery is the sight fishing, to pole a boat with a guide or a friend, look for fish, see a specific fish, and cast to that fish. Well, without clear water, that doesn't happen. So people didn't hire the guides that they were hiring before. They didn't stay at the hotels that they were staying at before.
Many scientists believe Florida Bay's problems began miles inland, here in the Everglades.
In response to public outcry, Congress and the Florida legislature enacted the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan in 2000 to restore freshwater flow through the River of Grass and provide relief to Florida Bay. 15 years into this plan, Florida Bay is still not getting enough fresh water.
What really worries me right now is that we're looking at a perfect storm type scenario.
Well, this is the worst I've ever seen it, with the grass die off and the amount of grass that we actually have floating.
By repeating itself, history is telling us that we need to focus on the heart of the problem, restoring freshwater flow to the bay before it's too late.
If it doesn't get better, we're definitely going to have a definite economic collapse from that, because no one's going to want to come down here to fish.
Well, I think the problem with Florida Bay is clear cut. The Everglades, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas said, it's a river of grass. Water's supposed to be coming out of Kissimmee River, through Okeechobee, down through the Glades, and dump out into Florida Bay. This is an estuary. It's been cut off. It's strangling. It's strangling. It's been cut off. It needs to be fixed. It can be fixed. The plumbing is available. I mean, the problem is strictly a matter of people are not complying with the demands and the requests of the public, and the public today feels very frustrated. They're very angry. I think things are going to change in the elections in the future, and I'm not a political guy, but somebody's got to get up and do something instead of just give lip service. And they got to pay attention to the people in the state, the millions of people who care about the resource.
For more information on projects that help Florida Bay, please visit www.evergladesfoundation.org/Florida Bay.